Dictation 11. Ready? It ought to be optional whether a man does a whole day's work for a whole day's pay or half a day's work for half a day's pay, except in cases where such an arrangement would cause practical inconvenience. A man's pay should not cease through the accident of his work being no longer needed, but should continue so long as he is willing to work, a new trade being taught him at the public expense if necessary. Unwillingness to work should be treated medically or educationally when it could not be overcome by a change to some more congenial occupation. The workers in a given industry should all be combined in one autonomous unit, and their work should not be subject to any outside control. The state should fix the price at which they produce, but should leave the industry self-governing in all other respects. In fixing prices, the state should, as far as possible, allow each industry to profit by any improvements which it might introduce into its own processes, but should endeavor to prevent undeserved loss or gain through changes in external economic conditions. In this way, there would be every incentive to progress with the last possible danger of unmerited destitution. And although large economic organizations will continue as they are bound to do, there will be a diffusion of power which will take away the sense of individual impotence from which men and women suffer at present. Some men, though they may admit that such a system would be desirable, will argue that it is impossible to bring it about and that therefore we must concentrate on more immediate objects. I think it must be conceded that a political party ought to have proximate aims, measures which it hopes to carry in the next session or the next parliament, as well as a more distant goal. German socialism was captured by those who had desired a less impracticable policy. The modification which occurred was of exactly the wrong kind. Acquiescence in bad policies such as militarism and imperialism, rather than advocacy of partial reforms, which, however inadequate, would still have been steps in the right direction. A similar defect was inherent in the policy of French syndicalism as it existed before the war. Everything was to wait for the general strike. After adequate preparation, one day the whole proletariat would unanimously refuse to work. The property owners would acknowledge their defeat and agree to abandon all their privileges rather than starve. This is a dramatic conception, but love of drama is a great enemy of true vision. Men cannot be trained except under very rare circumstances to do something suddenly which is very different from what they have been doing before. If the general strike were to succeed, the victors, despite their anarchism, would be compelled at once to form an administration, to create a new police force to prevent looting and wanton destruction, to establish a provisional government issuing dictatorial orders to the various sections of revolutionaries. Now, the syndicalists are opposed in principle to all political action. They would feel that they were departing from their theory in taking the necessary practical steps, and they would be without the required training because of their previous abstention from politics. For these reasons, it is likely that even after a syndicalist revolution, actual power would fall into the hands of men who were not really syndicalists. Another objection to a program which is to be realized suddenly at some remote date by a revolution or a general strike is that enthusiasm flags when there is nothing to do meanwhile, and no partial success to lessen the weariness of waiting. The only sort of movement which can succeed by such methods is one where the sentiment and the program are both very simple, as in the case in rebellions of oppressed nations, but the line of demarcation between capitalist and wage earner is not sharp like the line between Turk and Armenian, or between an Englishman and a native of India. Those who have advocated the social revolution have been mistaken in their political methods, chiefly because they have not realized how many people there are in the community whose sympathies and interests lie half on the side of capital, half on the side of labor. These people make a clear cut revolutionary policy very difficult. For these reasons, those who aim at an economic reconstruction which is not likely to be completed to morrow must, if they are to have any hope of success, be able to approach their goal by degrees through measures which are of some use in themselves, even if they should not ultimately lead to the desired end. Finished.